LINDSEY, WENDLER, Dresner partners, based in Chicago. I am part of their Dallas office, leading the way there. And I'm really excited to have these panelists here today. We're very lucky to have them. And I really want them to introduce themselves. And please don't hold back, because you guys have, phenomenal backgrounds. And I think anyone that is in a business, hires, you're going to want to know them and listen to what they have to say about how to not lose your key in people, how to build a company that has a human capital that really help you grow. So Vince, you want to kick it off?
All right, thanks, Lindsay. Vince POSCENTE. I've lived in Dallas for 27 years. I married a Texas gal who's sitting right over there, and didn't know that was an option until I met her and went, wow, here I come. So I'm originally from Canada, competed for the Canadian Olympic team in the 92 Olympics. And the reason I'm on the speaking circuit is I started ski racing at 26, and I was in the Olympics at 30. Not only at the Olympics, but vying for the gold medal. So in that experience, I started to learn about how you can accelerate an outcome, but more importantly, the audiences I speak to are leadership or sales, and they want to accelerate their outcomes. And often these groups start at, what do we do? How do we get there? How do we make this happen? Give us a strategy. And it really starts back with what we talked about earlier, is the emotional quotient. And so 8 books later, New York Times bestselling author, was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame with a bunch of dead people, still very much alive. Over to you.
And well, that's a little bit hard to follow up. I would have to say my athletic prowess just extends to my Peloton PR, and no Olympic medals here. Sorry. I'm Martha Reynolds. I'm founder of My People Person. It's a boutique recruiting firm here in Dallas. Work predominantly with lower middle market companies, founder-owned small businesses, helping them identify, recruit, and retain individual contributors, director level candidates, C-level executives. Have had the opportunity to work with a lot of different types of companies, but a real focus of mine has been on working with entrepreneurs and PE firms and their portfolio companies as they're looking to particularly grow their companies, really develop that leadership team that sets them up for a successful exit. Industry agnostic, have had the good fortune to work in all sorts of different industries. Some of my most recent searches were a COO for commercial real estate, director of finance for a local nonprofit, director of ops for manufacturing, so really across the board.
Hi, everyone. I'm GENNÉA SQUIRE de TORRES. I have a talent management consulting firm. So, in all honesty, it's a new firm. I hung my shingle out last year after spending more than 10 years in the corporate world doing talent management work. And so I fell into it. I was originally in politics. And with that background, including other work in mediation, I ended up having a really great time and enjoying very much the talent management field. Most specifically, my firm works with executive succession planning as our primary business. And so my business does the opposite of what Martha does. And I like to joke that hiring me helps you avoid the use of having to hire Martha. And by no means would I want to take away from Martha's job and her usefulness, because if your company is in a growth stage, you most certainly would need to hire externally. But my work focuses on hiring from within and optimizing your internal top talent, fine-tuning and securing your company culture by retaining your employees internally, growing them internally, and then keeping them and having them lead your organization so that you don't have to go search on the outside to find somebody to come in to do what your company is passionate about doing. So I love what I do, and having worked in the corporate world for a long time, the corporations, larger corporations, have people like me internally, but the middle market does not have people like me. And that's why I started my business, because small and medium-sized businesses don't have, their HR people don't have the bandwidth to do what I do. They're already overworked. And they don't have need for full-time staff to do what I do. And so I can fill that gap by helping organizations really understand and see their employees for what they are as a whole, and not just the immediate offerings they have, but what they can offer in the long term in the future.
Great. Well, I don't think it's any secret that skilled labor talent is not only hard to find, but it's hard to keep. And you can't turn on the news without hearing about, some version of the story. And I think the companies we all work with in the middle market really do have a special kind of challenge in this area, because they're not able to offer everything that a big corporation can, but because of their size, they can do things differently. They can be more dynamic. And I know all of you have worked with both really large corporations and middle market companies, but since we have a crowd here that is mostly working with middle market companies, I'd really just be interested in to hear how you each perceive the market. Based on the work you're doing for your clients, what does it feel like out there? What's the biggest challenge that you just kind of run into? And I'm just curious to set a baseline.
I think immediately that comes to mind is what we've gone through for the past 3 years. I mean, there is so many corporations. I sent them an Uber Eats card. Why aren't they engaged? There's a mystification of why they're losing their people and why aren't they engaged. And what has been missing is a intimate conversation that happens at events like this. Last night was a great example. You could barely hear each other because of how loud it was, because everybody was just almost giddy in this ability to communicate and interface. And so these live events that you could put on. Now, middle market companies don't often put on large events or even events. There's things called retreats, and getting people to invest their time into the future of the company as we move forward has them feeling like they're part of something. And if these employees don't feel like they're part of something, they leave. They don't feel like they matter. And it's not a one-way communication in a social media world where it seems to be one way. Very much having this conversation happen face-to-face. We talked a bit about that water cooler talk. It's just the ability to be face-to-face is critical. So investing in that is coming back right now, because we kind of had a free ride a little bit because it was virtual. We're saving money. We don't have to fly anywhere, and they're realizing that's not working.
Martha, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say for me, seeing both sides of it, I'm fortunate in that a lot of my clients are growing their businesses. So a lot of the positions that I'm recruiting for are growth, but there's certainly plenty that are, oh my gosh, I have to have somebody next week because I just had 5 people bail because they were poached by another recruiter. And it's interesting to me in listening to the candidate side of things, very much like you said, it is about engagement. People will say, I'm willing to leave my job where I'm not unhappy. The commute is fine. I'm hybrid. I'll leave for the same money if I feel like I'm going to go somewhere where I'll be appreciated, where I'll be engaged, and also, most importantly, I think where I'm going to have an opportunity to grow. And I think I've seen that, I'm going to say 65 to 70% of the conversations that I have with people who are employed, engaged, otherwise happy at their job, I need a growth path. I need to know that I'm going to be in a job where they value me, and then they're going to help me expand my career, because it's no longer just one-sided. The employee just has a lot of strength right now to demand that kind of thing. And I think that's where you two guys definitely come in.
Yeah. So my specialty is the growth aspect. When it comes to lining out a career path for employees within an organization, if they don't see a future and they don't have a discussion about the future and they don't have an understanding of what that future could be at that organization, the majority of the time they're going to go. Now, there are people out there who don't want to grow. They love what they do. They'll stick around for what they're doing because they're passionate about it. But you can, utilize those people and identify who those people are through the work that I do to help those people train the other people who do want to grow and grow beyond them. And, in my world, we would call those people an irreplaceable pro or a key expert. And those people would be the people who would leave for the other reasons like more pay or more flexibility. But the majority of people do want to grow with an organization. And if they don't see that, and it's not just lip service, they have to see actual activity. They have to see the conversations in performance reviews. They have to have those conversations around where do you want to be at this organization? And then they also have to see their leaders having conversations about them. And that's what I facilitate, is leaders having conversations from a holistic perspective about their employees as a whole. It's almost like an audit of your organization, your human capital, your people portfolio. And if people don't see that happening, they're like, okay, well, let's see if the grass is greener elsewhere. And you don't want to lose those people.
Right. I reach out to them and there they go.
That LinkedIn inbox, it fills up.
So what I'm hearing you say is that what you mostly see is that employees, be it key or really anyone in the organization, they want to be seen. They want to have a real conversation and know what the next few years is going to look like should they commit to stay with the organization. And then they want opportunities to learn new skills and, just grow in their own personal and professional development. We talked about that a little bit in our conversations before this, and how, Vince, you kind of take a different approach when you meet with a company. You're almost teaching them how to think differently. And I was wondering if maybe you could speak a little bit about that, because GENNÉA would, she would do those performance reviews, but she would also be, a consultant on who to bring in to give those employees what they might need.
Well, every client's different, but every client's the same when it comes to finding out what the emotional quotient is. And the emotional quotient, now, let me just back up a little bit. To decide to go to the Olympic Games in 4 years from today makes no sense. But emotionally, it made sense. To march in the opening ceremonies was such a draw. And what I've been finding is there's this two-part equation to get people inspired to go somewhere. One is aspirational. Disney's was, we make people happy. Okay, I want to be part of that culture. Innovate at 3M. I want to be part of that innovation culture. And that's aspirational. But also the piece that I don't want to experience ever again, which was watching friends march in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics in Calgary, friends that I had raced with in the sport of luge. And I realized that the sting of regret was more of a motivator than the aspiration to get to the Olympic Games. So to sit with an executive, a CEO, and find out what is aspirational about what we're trying to accomplish here, but what do we never want to experience again? And one thing that brings a company together is that foxhole mentality, being able to say, we're in this together, we're going to do this together. And when you couple that with the emotional quotient, now if I'm in a room full of engineers or CPA or numbers people, they might think, emotion. And so there might be this disconnect, but we all have something that will drive us internally. And so to have that as the starting conversation starts to create that flywheel of momentum. And so often when I get hired, and many of us, what do we do? How do we get there? But we step back and say, what's the bigger picture? What are we a part of? And So that's how I'm going to summarize with that.
Yeah, I mean, something we talked about kind of on that note is, and for all of us in this room who are involved in M&A, and we are for the most part numbers people to a certain extent. The softer side of business skills is it's hard to define. It's hard to be quantitative about it, and I think it's safe to say that until maybe the more recent years, it's been fairly neglected to be an important part of a business's strategy. And GENNÉA, we were talking about businesses that are doing it right that you've worked with, and you mentioned this kind of soft skills, and I thought maybe you could talk about that company that's doing it right.
Okay, so full disclosure, I didn't work with them, but the executive is a good friend of mine, and so it's a Fortune 100 company, and it's been around for 185 years, and they pretty much don't hire externally at all, and when they have interviewed for external hiring, and the only time they do that is when they're going into a new business that they haven't been in before. So in this case, they were going into a new software area, and they needed to hire some external leadership with experience in that to lead them forward. But they can teach their business. You can teach your business to pretty much anyone, but what you can't teach are soft skills, and you cannot teach a cultural fit. So when they have, on the rare occasion, hired externally, they are not hiring just for that skill set that is lacking. They are hiring for a cultural fit. They are hiring for a soft skills fit, and they're hiring for just general engagement and leadership skills. And it's gotten them, they're almost 200 years old. I mean, they do very well. They're Fortune 100, and they bring people in from the bottom and they hire them up. There are there are several organizations that do that. Some of the others we've talked about, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, hire them right out of college. Raytheon, hire them right out of college. And they train them up, and they train everyone, and they develop everyone, and they do development plans and growth plans and for everyone from the bottom up. And yes, people do leave. And we talked about that. They're like, why am I going to train and develop somebody if they're going to leave? But if you're doing it for everyone, the few people that do leave, it's okay. You're going to have some attrition. But the majority of your people will stay, and they will grow, and they will live that culture that you were teaching from the beginning.
Well, I mean, now it's really about being competitive. If everyone else is going to implement projects that help people grow and pursue kind of different areas where they can learn, the ones that kind of don't and stick to an older mentality, I have to imagine they're going to be calling Martha.
Right. Well, and it starts with the hiring process, and like you talked about, hiring for fit and hiring for the growth that the person can bring to the organization as well. I mean, it's just a good long-term plan. And when you think about the middle market and the types of companies that we're all working with, it can be a challenge sometimes to start that. But I think when you start with the hiring process and you hire people who have those soft skills and people who are really engaged and people who want to grow and want to help grow your company, that's a great place to start. And that's kind of one of the things that I really focus on with my clients is, so what's your vision? What's your objective? What are the goals? And let's get people on board initially who that resonates with. There are people who want to work for a Fortune 100 company, and there are people who would rather jump off a bridge, and they want to work for a middle market company, and they want to be part of that. And I think that's some of the things, you start with that in the interview process, and you make that really visible as you are selling these people on the position that you're trying to hire them for. And I think that really helps.
Vince, we were talking about companies doing it right. GENNÉA mentioned one very mysterious company. And I was wondering if there's a company you've worked for that you could point to and say, yeah, they're doing it right. You know, there's something to this. They're different.
The first one, a client of mine is Lennox. Now, that I know they're huge, but the HVAC world is very disconnected. I mean, there's a lot of independents all across the country. And what Lennox does is builds a culture that's got a long history, a couple hundred years. They've got a facility in the Midwest that was hit by a tornado, I think 3 years ago, that was annihilated. But they always treat themselves and anybody that's with them as a family. And when they have that kind of mindset, they all took it personally. All the mechanics in the field said, that's our family, that's our company. And they pulled together instead of saying, what are you going to do for me today? And so the entire industry is screaming out for talent. Where do we get mechanics? Where do we get people that are specialists in this? And Lennox is just developing those people from the bottom up with their different divisions, but also putting on these live events. They just didn't stop putting on live events to have their people together, to feel good about who they're with. And then it's like a big family reunion when they get together. So then what does that do? It creates experiences, and people never forget an experience. So as much as we want to focus on the numbers and making sure that that we're doing this in a very process-driven orientation, take a page out of FedEx that their motto is people, process, profit. You start with focusing on the people, internally, externally. Make sure the process is watertight, and then the profit will follow. And you just don't always see that, especially in my world. I'll get brought in and I'll look at it and go, well, no wonder.
I mean, that's kind of my next question is, I'm sure you've all seen kind of disaster situations. You know, what's usually going on there? Could it be anything? Or like, are you, if let's call it in the last few years when you are hired and you go in somewhere, what's wrong? And where do you even start?
Well, I could say, I mean, for me, I'm kind of a quick and easy one here. I guess the thing that I really hate to see is someone will be very excited. They've got a key position they've got to fill. They bring me in, and I have to have a COO, but they haven't given any thought to who is that person. What they know, here are the tasks maybe that somebody needs to do on a day-to-day basis, and not thought about, well, here's who this person is, and here's going to be, they maybe do 30, 60, 90, like this is what we want them to accomplish, but really, what is the long-term goal? How is this person going to fit in the organization? How are they going to grow in the organization? And how are they going to help the organization grow? And so for me, it's about, going in and doing that groundwork so that when you do a search, you know who you're looking for. And it's not just a director. It's not just a COO. It's a really specific person, especially in the middle market, because you're dealing with a smaller organization. And so that person has a huge amount of impact. And so the worst thing that happens, and I see it more often than I like, is somebody who didn't do the homework hires somebody based on kind of an arbitrary set of requirements. 6 months in, says, well, this person isn't working. This person isn't the fit, and they don't really know why. They're just not a fit. And so really, to me, people need to go in and do their homework and really be prepared to think about somebody as an integral part of their organization and their organization's growth and their organization's exit plan as they're going in and initially hiring them.
Good point.
So earlier in my career, I worked for an organization that would buy people, and they had no shame about being a highest bidder on somebody. Now, they didn't offer stock options or anything like that because they were a private company. Well, they weren't private, but they were foreign. So they wanted to hire famous people. So a CMO from marketing, at Nike, or a COO from a competitor, a very well-known competitor, and they would just buy them at the highest possible dollar. And that doesn't necessarily mean things worked out. Just because that person was a rock star at Nike or Apple doesn't mean that they would fit the culture of this organization. The organization had some cultural issues, being that they were still run from afar, but they were also in another country. And I mean, they had a lot of turnover. So,
and it's an important point. Yesterday, I don't know how many of you were sitting in on the ESG section, but we all know that this is a more and more prominent aspect of conversations going into investments. When private equity companies are looking to buy or invest in a company, and when their LPs are looking to invest in them, we know that this is a conversation they will have now. And one of the things they touched on yesterday was on the S part of ESG, employee turnover is highly scrutinized. And they were saying that it's more so than in years past. And, that really says something about the work environment and how engaged the employees are. And I was thinking, okay, if you got hired, let's say a private equity company, they buy a platform investment, and they need to assess what do we need to do to optimize this culture. Like, where would you each kind of start in that process? Because you're all coming at it from slightly different perspectives.
I actually worked with Boston Scientific, and they hadn't spent a great deal of time on their culture mission. Because they're just into acquisition and want people to get better, and we ended up sitting down with their senior executives and establishing a motto, if you will, which was, "We make a difference for life." And as soon as they got that motto, if you will, they felt that they were a part of that. So a very established company, been around 100 plus years, but had never really spent enough time on that. Another example would be Coca-Cola in the mid-'80s. You remember when the new Coke came out, 85? Some of you were born in 85. Anyway, so in that way back in 1985, Coca-Cola invented the new Coke, and they had done product tests. Everybody knew it was a superior product because of the focus groups, and there was a consumer revolt. They sat down with a local fellow named Jim Krupe, and Jim asked them, "What's your mission statement?" And this is Coca-Cola, and they said, "Well, we are a company to provide maximum stakeholder value, to be able to be a soft drink." And they said, wait, where's the, and then we're talking about emotion again. And I'm going to put words in his mouth, but where's the emotional quotient? And in 1985, at that meeting, they established this: put a Coke within reach of every human being on the planet. And everybody in that company knew what their job was, whether they were a receptionist, whether they were delivery, whatever their job was, it was to put a Coke within reach of every human being on the planet. And that foxhole mentality came overlaid on that. And at every Coca-Cola facility, you will see a sign that's now abbreviated. It says a Coke within reach. And everybody at Coca-Cola knows that. So it's never too late to start that conversation, but it coalesces people. It brings people together to be part of something that bigger than them. And it's a retention tool as well.
And I would say it's never too early to start that conversation either. Again, when I sit down with clients, that's one of the things that we have, that's a big part of our initial conversation. And I think it should be an initial, part of the conversation with candidates. It's something that I bring up in vetting candidates for clients. Here is the vision. Here's the what this company is about, and you have to know what that is. And it's a great selling point for bringing on great people. And it's that thing that also tells you, do these values align with you? Is putting a Coke in everybody's hand going to align with my values? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And that's a great way to know whether or not I'm a good fit for your organization. And I think, again, when you get to the middle market and portfolio companies, they haven't always done that kind of work. And it's a lot of work to go through that. But if you start that again early in the process with new employees that you're bringing on, as you very often do in a new acquisition, it really helps get that alignment. And especially if you can do it at the top and have it filter down, it's really impactful.
So what I would do if I was brought into an organization and they needed help with this retention issue is I would first look at the org chart. Org chart is an extremely valuable tool, and it can show you where there are gaps. It can show you where there might be management issues. It can show you where some people might have too much responsibility or not enough. And from that point, I would be evaluating where best to have your people and what people belong where. Because sometimes you can have somebody under the wrong manager and they're not providing their full potential to the organization. And therefore, they're not happy. They're stuck and they can't move forward. And therefore, that retention becomes an issue.
On the being stuck and the succession planning and what you see, would it be fair to say that if an employee in your organization does not have a specific growth plan in mind, that they are 100% at risk of leaving at any time? Is this something that, like when I look at my company, is it something I need to make sure that everyone has a plan in mind to kind of feel like they're on the same boat as I am?
Not everyone, but the majority of people need to have some kind of roadmap or railroad track, if you want to call it that, for them to go somewhere. Some people, their railroad track is shorter than others because they want to do other things. It's a stepping stone. And so not everyone, but everyone needs to be able to see their long-term value. And they need to know that they're valued. And people will leave organizations if they don't think they are valued, whether or not they're valued for their current position or any future position. So that's extremely important.
So Martha, when you are stalking people in their LinkedIn inboxes and trying to snatch them away from their employers,
you laugh, but that's what I do.
I mean, it's your job. What do you hear from them is, you mentioned lateral moves. That's really strange to me. What's the most common thing you hear at the moment why someone will take your call?
Sure. So I will say probably up until 6 or 8 months ago, it was all about the money. Everybody said, if I leave, I get a 20% raise no matter where I go. And there was a mass reshuffling of people in jobs. Now I will say I hear that 20% of the time, particularly with the younger ones, just so you know kind of who you're dealing with. They're all about the money right now. But for most people, the biggest thing is that they don't see that they are valued and they don't see that they have growth. Most people, regardless of the level that they're at, if they're 25 and fairly recently out of school, or they're 50 and mid-career, I'm going to say that, they want to be able to contribute. They want to be able to grow. They want to be able to be challenged. Now, there are those people who get into their little groove and they are going to sit at your front desk for 25 years and be thrilled. That's not always the case. That's
They
rare.
exist. They're just not super common, but they
Right.
exist.
They do.
And you need to monopolize
And you
them
need
if-
those people.
Yeah, you have
But
to have
most people want to be able to see some sort of continued growth because, I think post-pandemic, we really, because of the working from home and the remote, and because we're still hybrid, there has been that intermingling of even more that intermingling of our personal life and our professional life. And we all want to continue to grow and expand. So what I hear more often than not is I want that chance to continue to learn and continue to grow. And I'll do it with this company or I'll do it with another one.
I mean, the world's changed so much in the last few years and so fast. It kind of sounds like, in a way, we don't even really know what we want. And Vince, you touched on the work from home and missing the water cooler talks. And so here we are. Most people that are changing jobs do want a certain amount of flexibility. And, are they kind of self-sabotaging if they, demand to be 100% remote? What do you guys think about the new hybrid environment or complete, there are companies now that just everyone is working remote? Like what happens to those companies? Or do you think they're okay for now and they're going to run into something, down the road?
My sandbox is what makes people do what they do, why do they do it, and what motivates them. And looked at go back to college when you did learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Remember that? And at the very basic needs, food, shelter, is at the basic level. And there's an undercurrent, a phenomenon that's happening with people where they're very comfortable at home, cocooning. Faith Popcorn came up with that 20 years ago. But it's got an insidious hold on many people because, wait, I get to stay home, I get to be safe, I get to be secure, I get to be here. And sure, people want to aspire to growth. We've all been talking about that is an innate human condition. But when the security stuff's taken care of, it becomes insidious in nature because one will stay home because it's more comfortable that way and then wonder what's wrong. And mental health has come to the forefront of people talking about it, which we wouldn't have talked about it even 10 years ago. Because it's a thing. People are really struggling and they don't know why.
Do you think employers have a role to play in
lawyers?
No, employers.
Okay,
Did I say
good.
lawyers?
Because if we talk about lawyers, I'm
Okay.
out of here.
I said lawyers. Okay, no, love the lawyers, but
Love them,
no.
I hate them. Love them, hate them.
No, do you think employers now have a role to play in kind of some sort of role in mental health or helping people to think differently or better?
Yeah, it used to be taboo, right? It used to be taboo.
It's still a little taboo.
Well, it is in a way, but
makes you think of Billions. The lady on Billions who's
I love her.
I know, I do too. You remind me of her.
I haven't been watching Billions, but wow, sidetracked by Billions.
No, but do they have a role to play in the mental
Oh,
health?
yeah. So, put your big boy pants on and have those personal conversations. I mean, these are people, and what's really interesting is to watch Zoom. Go back to when the pandemic started, and then we were looking into the lives of Jimmy Fallon and his family. You were looking into who they were. And think of this. I mean, think of a salesperson trying to do their very best. I want to put my best foot forward. I want to look good. But think about who you're most attracted to. People that are vulnerable, people that are real. And so as an employer, as a leader, you're in sales. Your job is to be able to say, are we going to go in this direction together? And to have that vulnerability hasn't been a conversation that's had much traction in the past, but it has to happen today. It is something that we may resist because, that's not the way we've always done it. We're growing together, we're evolving together, and it's painful at times, but taking away that uncertainty by having a conversation that may arrive at very little growth, but a mutual understanding, we're going to find this together. And that's what's happening more and more.
I think we're kind of moving from very much this, kind of way that business was run in America, very much kind of manufacturing focused and manufacturing centric, and looking at our people as machines or parts, and very much from that manufacturing mindset. And then as we've moved very rapidly post-pandemic with this advance of technology and seeing into people's lives, it's a real shift. And so we're just now really catching on in so many organizations that people are not cogs in a wheel, that people are not part of the machine, that they're people. And they have a lot of depth and a lot of complexity, and we have to interact with all of that in an organization.
You would think that a middle market company would actually have a bigger advantage in succeeding and being that for their employees.
Oh, I think so. Just the ability to be agile and nimble and
Yeah.
make changes. I think, if you're middle market versus, Fortune 100, you have a lot more flexibility.
Do you think candidates that you work with would take a 10% less salary for more personal development? What do you think that balance is?
I think that's challenging. I see it happen? Yeah, sure. I have several people who I've placed, I'm going to say in the past 2 years, who've taken a pay cut to go to work for an organization where they see progression and growth, where they see great culture, and where they see the organization part of the community, and they get to bring that into their lives. Now, again, everybody saw, the 20% increase kind of across the board in comp. So, that hit everybody. And then when you talk about inflation, that's probably the biggest driver, from a comp standpoint right now, where people would take a pay cut. There may be a little bit hesitant to, just because they're already taking a pay cut. And so a lateral move is oftentimes a pay cut because of what's going on with inflation.
Any thoughts on work from home? How do you help? Your role is to go, meet with management executives and help them see where they're going, and then help them find the tools to do that. What do you do when everyone's work from home?
So it's really funny because I remember back in 2011 when I was doing my work remotely. Kind of remote. I was in an office and I was talking with people in Canada, and I was talking with people in Portland and Chicago for very brief interview meetings to assess talent. And so a lot of those people were work from home because they were remote throughout the country. We had headquarters in Dallas and a headquarters in Toronto. And so, I've been doing this work somewhat remote. Remote and me in an office and other people in another office. And I was using WebEx at the time because that was the only thing that you used. Zoom and Teams did not exist. But no matter what happened, at the end of the project, the capstone meeting, it was always in person all the time. You could not get the value of the meeting and some of the confidentiality out of it on a Zoom call. And so there are conversations you need to have about people in your organizations that you don't want on a Zoom call. And so doing it in person is highly valuable. And it builds camaraderie and understanding, and you get to see things that you wouldn't otherwise see if you're doing it on Zoom. But I would say that people don't want to be in an office all the time. Some people do want to be in an office all the time. I have children at home. I don't want to work from home. But I also don't want to be in an office 5 days a week. I want to be able to take my children to school. I do take my children to school almost every day. But then I work the rest of the day and I don't pick them up. My nanny
That's
picks
kind of the
them
beauty
up.
of technology.
Yes.
I don't even know what people did at work 30 years ago. I just don't know. But but now I can talk to 100 people. I can send 55 emails before lunch and answer all kinds of questions and start projects. And so I mean, in a lot of ways, you shouldn't have to be strapped to a desk in some arbitrary location.
Correct.
However, there is this kind of difficult to define in-person belonging that we crave, that we're trying to figure it out. And the world's changed a lot, and it's put a lot of pressure on employers to figure that out. We have just a few minutes left. I want to see if there are any questions, and then see if there are any last comments you'd like to leave our audience with. Any questions?
Good question. What would you tell a client that wants to do the culture and they think they have to have people in the office like every day, like dinner, and they're struggling trying to hire people who want to work at least a couple days from home, and they're like, I think they're struggling with the construction and things that, there's a lot of face-to-face stuff.
Well, I will tell you, I do have clients who are 100% in the office, and it is challenging for them to hire people. That being said, I was listening to this, thinking about a candidate I spoke to today, and she said, "Is this a remote position?" I said, "No, they're 100% in the office." She said, "Oh, thank God." She's like, "I'm so tired of being at home, and I would like to see other people, and I want to come into an office every day." That's rare, I think. I think more often people would like to actually be in the office most of the time. If they want to be in the office, they want to be in the office 3 to 4 days a week, maybe one day have the opportunity to work from wherever they want to work from, maybe have just more flexible, if I want to take 2 weeks and work from Colorado, great, I can do that. But really, I want to be in the office. And I'm seeing a lot more candidates ready to go back to the office. That being said, there is a whole pool who will never go back. I would say 20% of the workforce is going to look for remote only work. And I think that's just a conversation that you have. That's part of your first phone call with somebody is, what are you looking for here? And it's a fit or it's not a fit. Fortunately, I think there are people for both. There are companies that go both ways and people that go both.
I would say that a company needs to be absolutely honest about their expectations and what they want. And they need to decide that within the company before going out and hiring people, because you need to know who you are before you can be in a relationship with someone else. So as an employer, you have to know what your company culture is and what your expectation is, and sit down and write it out. And that way you can look for people that match that. And you don't want to hire somebody that doesn't match that, because it won't work out. So you have to be 100% honest about that. And if you are not honest about that, you're going to keep hitting roadblocks.
Any other questions for this amazing panel? Yes.
So in terms of hiring, you talked a lot about culture and getting a good cultural fit. Is there anything like a Myers-Briggs or something that you maybe have a personality about for a company as well as for the individuals?
There are a lot of those tools out there. So I'm a certified partner with Predictive Index. So I'll speak to them because that's the tool that I use. I've been a recruiter for over 25 years and started my recruiting career using different tools. Have always used a behavioral assessment, something like a Predictive Index, Culture Index, Myers-Briggs. There are a lot of those tools out there. I think they're really great. There's a part of it that is for the employer. So you know who your culture is, you know who you're looking for, and you have multiple people engage in that with the software so that it's not just one person's view. That's really important. And then you can use that as a baseline to assess candidates. They also have a cognitive assessment portion of it that I'm a big believer in. There are also many companies out there that have cognitive assessments that are general, and then of course specific like accounting or technology tools. And I think all of those are really useful.
I've worked with a lot: Myers-Briggs, Adapt 15, Hogan, Predictive Index. All of them offer a similar thing. Some of them are considered a little more outdated than others. But they all do a similar thing. And really, you cannot rely 100% on any of them. I mean, it is literally, you can use that and it's a great tool, but it is a data point on the profile. It's like when people are like, oh, we do talent because we do performance reviews. No. Performance reviews are a data point on a talent profile. Just like an engagement score is a data point. When you put all of those things together, you can then get a full view and an idea and an understanding of the company, the candidate, the internal top talent, whatever it is. But I would never rely on that as a defining factor.
I need to jump in because you mentioned something about both sides of the equation. And Marcus Buckingham's book, Now Discover Your Strengths, is a very simple tool. The code comes on the inside flap of that book. And what it would do in those, and I've got 2 clients, smaller companies, that have these prospective employees go through that book, go through that index. And so they become very clear on what's important to them. And so that becomes part of the conversation on the flip side of that, which is very helpful because I'm just going to, because we run out of time, I'm just going to go into uncertainty. I can promise you every single founder and CEO you're talking to doesn't really know what they're doing. They say they do, but the level of uncertainty today is so profound, and the pressure on them to know where we're going is so profound that to create more certainty is being able to know what we're going to do next, maybe tomorrow, in the next 2 weeks, and next 2 months, next 2 years. And to help them with that uncertainty is one of, you didn't sign up for this, but that's one of our responsibilities in this room, is to help with that uncertainty.
That's a really good point, and I think a great way to wrap this up. I hope you guys got at least a nugget of wisdom you can take away from here. Please, come meet our panelists after this, and hope to continue the conversation with you all.